What's going on, everybody? John with John's Record Rack, back with another video. So today's video is going to be a contest video. So recently, within the last week and a half or so, I finally, after I think 4 years in the VC, got to 100 subs. Actually, just a little bit over. I think right now I'm at 105 subs. So, yay, finally got there. I really would like to thank Mr. Ron Haggerty. He made a video. I sent him some records, and he made a video just showing the records that I sent him. And at the end of his video, he plugged my channel and asked some of his followers to go check out my channel, and if they liked it, to sub. And that did it. Within maybe 3 days, I was at 100, actually over 100. So Ron, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I'm so very humbled, and I'm so very humbled to everyone who watches my channel and who is subscribed to my channel. Means a lot. I know everybody's time is valuable, and that the fact that you take, the time to actually watch my videos when you could probably be doing other things is very humbling, and I thank you all from the bottom of my heart. And Ron, thank you again. I really, really appreciate it. Humbling. Okay, now let's get started, and I'll lay out the parameters of the contest. Okay, so this is going to be my first contest, so hopefully I do it right. And this is to celebrate me finally getting to the 100 subscribers milestone. So I'm going to do a show me your 5 favorite albums from one particular record label. So, it could be something like, on the heavy metal side, Metal Blade or Megaforce, Earache Records, Roadrunner, something like that. Or on the jazz side, you got Blue Note, Impulse, Riverside, something like that. Or it could be a bigger label that doesn't just have one style of music, or is not known for one style. It could be, Columbia or Warner Brothers, A&M, something like that. But your 5 favorite records from one label will be the contest. And I will run it for 2 weeks. Today is Sunday. So what is the date today? I don't actually remember. I think it is the 4th. So today is August 4th. So in 2 weeks, Sunday at this time, and I'll do it, from, till the end of the day on Sunday in 2 weeks. So not next Sunday, but the following Sunday. I will announce the winners of the contest probably on Monday, the day after. So, and then, just to make it fair, I'm not going to judge anybody's videos and pick my favorite or which one I think is best, because they're all going to be great, I know. But anyone who does make a video, I'm just going to use like a random name generator. I'll take everybody who's made a video and put them in a name generator, and then it'll spit out 2. I'm going to pick 2 winners, and that's who will get what I'm going to give away. So what I ask is that if you do want to participate, make a video of your top 5 albums from one particular record label, and then just comment on this video that I'm making right now, just letting me know that you've made your video, and then I will be able to go over to your channel and watch it. So those are the parameters. So for me, there's so many different record labels who have put out just a phenomenal amount of records, whether they be, like I mentioned before, heavy metal labels or jazz labels, or all-encompassing labels, rock labels. There's so many, it's really hard to narrow it down. But one of my absolute favorite labels, jazz labels, is CTI Records. CTI Records stands for Creed Taylor Incorporated. Creed Taylor was a well-known jazz producer. He was affiliated with Impulse Records early on. After Impulse, he went to Verve Records, and then was affiliated with them until really the end of the 60s. So if you ever look at any of your Verve records, and you look at the credits, maybe on the back or even on the label, you'll notice Creed Taylor signature, produced by Creed Taylor. So, but after he left Verve Records, he went to A&M. And the reason for him going to A&M is he wanted to start his own jazz label. And the reasoning for that is he wanted to take jazz to the mainstream, basically, to the next level. Obviously, jazz in the 50s and 60s had a tremendous amount of success, with Verve and Impulse and Riverside, Blue Note, what have you, classic, legendary labels. But Creed Taylor saw the, success and maybe even the lifestyles of some of the rock and roll bands of the day, late 60s, think Led Zeppelin and Cream and Jimi Hendrix, and that, all that whole scene, the whole rock and roll scene that was, just exploded in the late 60s. But he saw these guys traveling around in private jets and touring all over the world and playing for, thousands upon thousands of people, and just the concerts were huge spectacles in some cases. And he saw that, and he wanted to take jazz to that level, basically. And so that was what he wanted to do with CTI Records. So early on, to get his start, he kind of had a parent record label in A&M, and he put out, or I should say A&M put out CTI releases, under the A&M banner. So you'll see, if you've ever seen any of the late 60s kind of jazz, maybe R&B, soul records, some of them, there's artists like Quincy Jones and Tamika Jones and maybe Antonio Carlos Jobim, where they had A&M releases in 1967, 68, 69, and down in the right-hand corner, usually, sometimes in the left, but most of the time in the right-hand corner on the front cover, you would see the CTI logo as an A&M release, but it was CTI, kind of under that banner. So that's how he kind of got the label started. After that, in 1970, he was able to leave A&M altogether and take CTI as a standalone record company. And for close to maybe a decade, Creed Taylor was, having some of that mainstream success, the pop world success that he envisioned. The CTI concerts, jazz concerts or tours, are somewhat legendary, as they were touring around the world, playing for sold-out arenas. And what he was able to do is he took a collection of, his core musicians that he had. Some of them were house musicians, some of them, released records a lot through CTI, in addition to other labels that jazz musicians were recording for. But he was able to take these group of musicians and tour all over. And some of the releases from CTI Records, in my opinion, are some of the very best of the 1970s. A lot of soul jazz, a lot of R&B funk influenced jazz, and then of course fusion. They were one of the real big fusion labels of the time. So, and you had classic artists who recorded for Blue Note and other more prestigious jazz labels on the CTI label. You got guys like Freddie Hubbard and Herbie Hancock and Stanley Turrentine, to name a few, Jim Hall, guys like that. So they were well-respected jazz artists of the day were recording for CTI. CTI Records kind of has a bad reputation for among some jazz purists, especially back in the day. Some of the critics did not like CTI Records. They thought it was too mainstream, kind of watered down. Eventually became some think that the CTI releases were what really led to the smooth jazz craze of the 1980s. And, to some extent I can see that. Not all the releases are great. Some of them are definitely a little watered down. But in my opinion, the majority of the releases from these artists, from CTI, especially from like 1970 to 1977, were just absolutely fantastic fusion records, soul jazz and funk jazz records. And in fact, the hip hop, when hip hop got started in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, many of these early hip hop pioneers were using samples, were taking samples from CTI Records, that their parents had in the 70s. They were taking these records and sampling them. So it really, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, CTI is one of the most sampled record labels in hip hop, especially early on, in the early to mid 80s. So little backstory on CTI Records. I love CTI Records. They're one of my favorite jazz labels. I put them up there alongside some of the classic jazz labels. And that's my personal opinion. Feel free to disagree. Let's go through my top 5. So we're going to start here with a compilation. It's a live album. As I mentioned earlier, CTI was pretty famous, especially early on in the early 70s, for their large-scale tours, and their rock-like atmospheres with their shows. And it wasn't necessarily just people coming to an auditorium to sit there and listen to some jazz. They were definitely closer to what you would see for a rock show back in the day. People were standing up, clapping, dancing, and so this was one of the first. In fact, this might be the first live release from CTI Records. So this is the California concert, and this is just a fantastic live record for CTI. The guys on here, you've got George Benson, Freddie Hubbard, Herbert Laws, Stanley Turrentine, Hank Crawford, Johnny Hammond, Ron Carter, Billy Cobham, Airto Morea, just who's who in jazz. And this record is just fantastic. On this particular record, they do a version. Here's a live version of "So What," the Miles Davis tune from the opening track for "Kinda Blue." They do a kind of a sped up live version with guitar. George Benson on guitar is on this particular record, and this is a double album. Awesome album cover. Always liked this cover. In fact, the first time I saw this, I didn't know anything about it as far as the music that it contained, how good it was. But I liked the cover so much that I had to grab it. So, again, CTI Records also, in addition to having some great jazz records, their covers are now iconic. Kind of like, Blue Note Records had iconic, and Verve had iconic jazz album covers. So did CTI. They're known for their covers. So even if you didn't know anything about the music back in the day, you were likely to probably at least pick up the record and look at it due to its cover. So California Concert, this is from 1970 at the Hollywood Palladium. Okay, next up we have some Latin jazz. And I mentioned him early as one of the early recording artists for CTI, and that would be Mr. Antonio Carlos Jobim with Stoneflower. This release also came out in 1970. I'm a really big fan of Latin jazz and bossa nova. I love bossa nova. Mr. Jobim is probably, arguably, one of the godfathers, if not the godfather, of bossa nova jazz. Absolutely phenomenal artist. Many of the standard bossa nova tunes that we know today were written by this guy. Stoneflower has, in addition to Stoneflower, he's got a couple of his classic tunes on here. Brazil is on this. Yeah, phenomenal record. And this cover, as you can see, is I mean, look at that. He just looks cool on this cover. He's got his cigarette, capturing the smoke, leaving his mouth. Just phenomenal. So this, actually, I'm not going to take it out for sake of time, but this opens up. It is a gatefold, and it opens up, and it's basically his upper body from the waist up. And here's the back side. You can see it's his jacket, and then he's got his hand there, kind of sticking in the pocket. Kind of hard to see with the reflection, but... So, Antonio Carlos Jobim, Stoneflower, 1970. Next up, a classic artist, we have Mr. Freddie Hubbard with Red Clay. This is one of CTI's first releases. Came out in 1970. So you got Freddie Hubbard on here, Joe Henderson, Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, Lenny White. Classic jazz artists. Also classic jazz fusion artists as well. This is probably, if not my favorite cover, it's in my top 3 favorite CTI Records covers. And believe it or not, this is becoming more difficult to find. At least 5 years ago, you were usually able to walk into a record store and go to the used jazz section. You were always able to find multiple CTI releases for, $5 and under. This record used to be that way, not anymore. I don't think I've seen this used in years, probably within the last 2 or 3 years. And if you do see it, it's actually becoming pricey. So, kind of a bummer, because it is a phenomenal record. And this is, in my opinion, one of Freddie Hubbard's best records, and it might even be his best record from the 70s. And, Freddie Hubbard is he's a legendary jazz performer. Most notably, through Blue Note. Some of his early releases, he is one of the pioneers of soul jazz, recording for Blue Note Records. So, phenomenal record. This is definitely, I would say, it has some soul jazz moments, but I'd say this is more along the lines of fusion. Freddie Hubbard, Red Clay, also 1970. Next up, we have Mr. Jim Hall. Jim Hall, phenomenal jazz guitarist, one of the great jazz guitarists of all time. This is Concerto. Yeah, this record was released in 1971, I believe. Phenomenal record. If you're a jazz guitar fan, highly recommended. And then, of course, the cover is phenomenal. Phenomenal cover. Jim Hall, Concerto. Okay, last up we have Mr. Stanley Turrentine with Sugar. This album is also from 1970. Killer cover. Actually kind of gross because he's licking somebody's toes, but definitely a classic cover. This is I'd say, definitely a soul, maybe even a little funk jazz record. One of my favorite records, not just from Stanley Turrentine, but of all time. Highly recommended. If you were going to get any CTI record release and you could only get one, I would arguably tell you to get this record. Players on here, in addition to Turrentine, of course, you have Ron Carter, George Benson, and Freddie Hubbard. The guitar work from Benson on here is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Highly recommended. Stanley Turrentine, Sugar, 1970. And there you have it. those are my top 5 favorite CTI records. If you want to participate in this contest, go ahead and make a video showing your top 5 favorite records from one specific record label. Doesn't matter if it's jazz, metal, rock, whatever. They all have to be from one label, and they don't have to all be from the same decade. It can be from multiple decades. They could span decades if you want. So just need your top 5 favorite records from one record label. And then once you've made your video, just leave a comment on this video letting me know that you've made your video, and I will watch it. And then this is going to last for 2 weeks. So starting today, so not next Sunday, but the following Sunday is when I will end the contest. I'm going to pick 2 winners, not next Sunday, but the following Sunday. I'll give you till the following Sunday at midnight Mountain Standard Time. I'm in Colorado, so Mountain Time. And I'll put everybody's name who made a video, entered the contest. I'll put it in a random name generator, and that'll spit out 2 winners for me. And one winner will receive, the first winner will receive this one, which is I showed at the beginning, California Concert. And the second winner will receive Freddie Hubbard, also a CTI Records release, Polar AC. I know I didn't talk about this record, but phenomenal record. You'll really enjoy this one. So yep, here's the 2. First winner, California Concert. Second winner, Freddie Hubbard, Polar AC. So again, thank you to everyone of my subscribers for taking the time to watch my videos. I really appreciate it, and helping me get to the 100 sub milestone. Really appreciate it. Again, watch this video, make your own if you want to enter the contest, and then let me know in the comments that you've made a video. Hope everybody is doing well, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.